Thanks for stopping by the Badass Records podcast.
Make sure to follow on YouTube,
Instagram,
and Twitter. New episodes come out Thursdays.
We're talking people, music, and badass records.
Episode 107, Badass Records Podcast. Hanging with, please correct me if I'm wrong, Leyden Galicia?
Leyden.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but Galicia?
Galicia's
okay,
right.
because I look at that word.
Yeah.
And I think Somos de Andalucía,
Really?
the Castilian part of Spain, where all the S's are. But Leyden, where does that come from?
So Leyden itself is a made-up name.
Okay.
So my parents made it up when I was born. They decided that they wanted to kind of pay homage to my family members. So they took the first two letters of past family members that were deceased already and kind of made mine. So the L-A is for Lalo, E-D is for Edith, and A-N is for Antonio. So bringing that together was Leyden.
What's the middle piece?
Edith.
Edith. Okay.
E-D.
Okay. Yeah.
Edith.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was just their names, the first two letters, and they just kind of combined it and played with it. And my parents just kind of just
and Lalo is a nickname for Gerardo, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've known a Lalo or two in my day.
Yeah.
Typically wind up being good people.
That's cool, man.
That's awesome. But Dink.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Correct.
DINKC.
Yep.
Death is not. No, what is it?
Death is not knowing certainty.
Death is not knowing certainty.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another acronym.
And where does that come from?
That one was kind of, it started as a nickname at first, just like my brother. I have older siblings, so it's my sister, my brother, and my other brother. So the one I'm closest to in age, we were super into wrestling. So growing up, we would obviously, like back when it was WWF and all that, the good days.
Yeah.
There was
Jimmy
a wrestling
Superfly
film.
Snuka,
straight up, man.
Ultimate
Hulk
Warrior.
Hogan, everybody, man. It was just nonstop, and we would always watch it, man. It was just something that we would always bond over, you know. So there was this wrestling clown named Doink.
Really?
Yeah, there was this
in
wrestling
the
clown.
WWF?
Yep.
Okay.
He was this wrestling clown named Doink, and he came out one time with multiple versions of himself, kind of like copycats of himself. And they were like, "You can't do that. That's against the rules. You can't." He's like, "All right, whatever." So then on the next match, he comes out.
We're the WWF, and we always follow the rules.
Right, exactly. So it was just a funny like play and like a whole backstory of him. But they basically told him like, "You can't be doing that. Like that's illegal. That you can't be cheating that way." He's like, "Whatever." So the next thing he comes out with, he's like, "Well, I'm not gonna bring out any more Doinks," and then he introduces Dink, like a miniature version of himself.
Get out of here.
I swear. And he comes out and it's just this little guy that's dressed exactly like him. And he's just comes out and he's like, "Well, you didn't say I couldn't do this." So then he becomes kind of like his little like sidekick, like mascot guy.
That's hilarious.
And it's so like, just like kind of out of this world. But like for us, like being Mexican, I was raised on lucha libre out in Mexico.
Yeah.
So when I had an uncle growing up who worked for Lucha Libre, so I would always go to the wrestling matches with him when I was out there. So I'd see all the back-end production. I'd get to meet all the wrestlers backstage and just hang out and everything. So out in Mexico, it's very common and traditional that the wrestlers have a miniature sidekick of them that wear the same mask, the same costume, the same outfit, everything. So it was very familiar for me to see that concept, and he was, I believe, the first one to bring it to the United States was Doink the Clown and mimic a little miniature version.
Hispanic.
No, he wasn't.
Okay, just a regular old dude.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it was kind of interesting. So that's kind of like where it kind of stemmed from, where my older brother just called me Dink because I was just a little version of him. I was just always copying him, you know. I wanted to be like him. And it just kind of evolved from there. I just stuck, and then I started to use it as my tagging name, and then I added the C at the end for KC. And then as the brand grew and evolved, and me as an artist, I just decided I wanted that to be the name of the brand, but then it be significant in a way, kind of how my name comes from, you know, past family members.
Very cool.
I wanted it to be
very cool,
meaningful, and an acronym for Death is Not Knowing Certainty, which plays into my brand as an entirety.
So what is the certainty that is not known. Just like when,
When, where, why, how. But it's the only uncertainty we have in life is death. It's a bit of an
And
oxymoron.
taxes.
Yes,
And
exactly.
taxes.
Very much so.
I forget who
Unless
said,
you try
somebody
to,
said that.
Yeah.
The only two certainties in life are death and taxes.
Yes. That's funny.
So, DINKstudios.com. So it's DINKC Studios, all one word.
Yep.
.com, and then Dink DINKC. On Instagram. What's the
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that the
So I
handle?
have both. So it's me, Dink, as just my personal entity as the artist. So I have that on .com and on Instagram, just Dink. And then Dink Studios is the actual physical brick and mortar that I opened this past year.
Yeah, July,
Dink
right?
Studios. Yeah, man.
But I saw something that said the thing has been alive and breathing since 2012.
Yes, the brand itself and me as an artist and what I do, all the services I offer, as far as everything that I've been doing, happened and started in 2012 for sure.
Okay. 600 Ohio Ave in KCK, Strawberry Hill, multi-use creative space, gallery, and storefront.
Yeah.
Let's see, live paint with Dink on February 18th and March 2nd. I don't know if this will be out by the 18th, but hopefully.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then DIY vinyl.
Oh yeah,
Was that
my
yesterday?
garment. Yeah, so
Okay.
that was the last one I had for January was yesterday, and I had one I believe the week prior to that on the 19th or so.
Okay.
So those were just two workshops that I just wanted to do in January, just to kind of give them a go and see.
I want to attend one of those
Yeah.
for sure. Tell me what the inspiration behind doing that and what the process itself actually looks like.
Yeah, so I've always been a fan of just clothing in general, like just designs on shirts, like kind of what you have going on over here. I absolutely love just the process of designing something, drawing something, digitizing, and then going on to garments. That's always kind of fascinated me as far as like streetwear clothing and just clothing brands in general.
Okay.
So growing up, I wasn't really that big into like brands and stuff like that. Like I didn't grow up with the nicest shirts, of this and that name brand shit. Like that just wasn't it for our household, So one of my goals,
6 total, right? So 4
Yeah.
kids, mom and dad. Is that
yeah,
the right number? Okay.
yeah. So in total, like we were just like hand-me-downs, like whatever we could get, this and that. So one of my biggest dreams growing up was always to just have my own clothing line and just like whatever I could draw or design, like I just want to throw it on a shirt, like as easy and as quick as I possibly could. So it wasn't until about like 2017 or 2018 or so, when I was living in Denver at the time, that I got my actual like vinyl cutter and heat press. I got like this package offline. Like it was like a Black Friday deal, and they were like, here's your starter kit, whatever. And I was like, let's do it. Like, let's go ahead and buy this and just kind of see what's up. So I taught myself how to do vinyl plotting, and then heat press it. And then I just started to make some random tests and stuff, and it just started to evolve.
Vinyl plotting means...
So it's basically like vinyl is the type of material that goes on the shirts. So like what I'm wearing right now, this white part, this isn't printed. It's called vinyl. So it's basically kind of like a sticker. If you imagine a roll, like kind of like a roll of paper, but it's sticker paper, and it runs through a machine. Your machine plugs into your laptop, and I send a design. I send this lettering through the machine to it, and it just cuts it with an X-Acto. It's like a machine that just cuts it. I take it out, and then I cut that piece of paper out, and I have my section. And then I have to go in, and I have to, what's called weeding, but you peel off the vinyl that you don't want to print, and it exposes the actual design that was cut. And you take that, and you put it under a huge heat press, like iron machine, the clothing, the design, and you press it, and it just goes directly onto those clothes. You peel it off, and it's set.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a very straightforward, easy, like point A to B, like process. And that's how I started my clothing line. And that's what I offer online. And when I do pop-ups and stuff like that, it's all handmade and like self-made on my own designs, like it's mine. So I wanted to showcase that and share that with the community by offering that in my studio, because I have the machines there. And it's just a matter of people coming in wanting to learn the process. And I have it in a way where it's kind of streamlined so that you guys can figure it out.
Sure.
Do it, see the creative process, and then you leave with your own garment.
Okay. So vinyl refers to the material. It doesn't have anything to do with the record.
No, not necessarily. No,
Okay.
it's just, that's what it's called, is vinyl.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like restaurant booth, that kind of.
So it sort of, but it literally just feels like kind of like a sticker that just sits on top of
Okay.
your clothing, but
Okay.
it kind of blends with the clothes. It's like made to be heat pressed for clothing,
Sure.
you know? Or you see like vinyl decals with stickers, you know, stuff like
Yes,
that. It's kind of
yes.
the same thing. It's just this one goes on clothing.
Now, are there special washing instructions? Does it hold up?
They hold really well,
Okay.
like surprisingly. And I do like a double press on it to make sure it's like set. But usually with the clients with like really intricate designs, I say like flip them inside out so
yeah.
it's not rubbing against the other clothes,
Yeah.
and then just kind of hang dry if you
Is
want
that
for
what
sure.
is that what causes if rubbing against other clothes?
Sometimes, like if it's just in the washer just constantly and
Yeah.
it gets stuck and it's just hitting that, like I don't know, I would feel like that would kind of mess the
Sure.
stuff up. So I
Sure.
just always say, just be safe and flip your shirts.
Yeah. And then Zoe Strom, is that?
What's that?
Let's see. Strohm from the pitch.
Oh, Zoe, yeah.
Zoe
Yeah.
Strom. Did a piece on you in the pitch. I just shouts out to her, but also I feel like I don't know, here in the last 6-12 months, like the pitch is just freaking incredible.
Yeah. They're
In
going
terms of cool content on Instagram.
Yeah.
And always saying we never have a paywall. If you like this post,
Yeah.
check out the rest of the stuff. And I feel like the folks that are putting the verbiage and the photos together for the posts are everybody's like high class
Yeah.
Or professional.
Yeah.
It just looks real nice.
Yeah.
And growing up here, I think it was Thursdays when the pitch used to come out.
Yeah.
And that was like
That was a minute ago.
yeah, like 90s,
Yeah.
80s, and that was find out what shows are happening.
Yes, yeah.
Another excuse to just go to a music store.
Yeah.
But I came across her piece on you, and I think that's how our correspondence started. So really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, sure.
And let's see here. So born in Mexico.
Born here, actually.
Born here.
In Kansas City.
In Kansas
yeah,
City.
But I basically went to Mexico before I was 1.
Okay.
I would always spend the summers out there, all 3 months out there, because my siblings obviously would get out of school. So
Yeah.
we would just drive down there and
Where?
just be there in Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah,
El
right. in
DF?
Mexico City. Yep.
Nice.
DF, back
Very
when
nice.
it was. Yeah, man.
And you still have family there?
Oh yeah, tons of family there. So we try to go visit. Obviously, as I've gotten older, it's been a little bit more difficult and stuff like that. But like I said, growing up while I was still in school, especially high school, every summer we would go out there. Just
Okay.
Almost every summer and just spend those 3 months. And it was great. So that's why I say like I was born here, but I was raised in both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there was did I see 6 years in New York?
So it was 7 years total that I was gone from Kansas City.
Okay.
So it was like 3.5 in New York and 3.5 in Denver.
Okay.
So roughly, yeah.
What took you to New York?
Honestly, man, it was just kind of out of a whim. Like
Really?
it was there was a few people that I knew that would go out there and visit and talk to me about it and everything. And I would always see it in like movies and magazines, like graffiti magazines and this and that, because that's like the birthplace of graffiti. It's like that's where it started, and that's pretty tight. So I've always just kind of had like this weird idea that I would see, this cinematic idea of New York, and I always loved it. So I just kind of wanted to go out there and visit just for a little bit and just kind of see what's up. And it was right after I graduated art school, so I was like, I kind of want to explore.
Art Institute?
Yeah,
Okay.
KCAI.
And
yeah.
high school was...
I went to Shawnee Mission East.
Hey,
Graduated 2009.
Lancers we will always be.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
for sure.
2009, though. I was
Yeah.
done a little bit before
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So, East, directly to the Art Institute?
Yep.
4 years?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
and then straight to New York.
And then straight to New York.
With-
Graduated 2013, and then 2014 I head out.
What did you take with you?
I just my bags and just kind of went out there and just kind of saw
Did
what's
you
up.
have a place lined up before you went? Or?
No, at the time, I was dating a girl, and we went to art school together.
Okay.
So then she kind of wanted to do the fashion thing, and she went out there. So then I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'll give it a try. I'll go visit. And I really liked it. Like, I really fell in love with the city. I went to visit for like about a week or so, and then I
She was
ended up
already there?
staying. Yeah, she was
Okay.
already there doing her thing. So then I just went to visit, and I really loved it. Like, it was super dope, and I thought it was something that I definitely needed to explore a little bit more. And a huge culture shock, like coming from here going to straight there, like it was insane. And
Yeah.
I don't know. The city moves with such a different pace, and I just felt like a different heartbeat out there. And I was like,
Yeah.
I want to explore this. I want to see what's up.
And earning a living and paying bills was doable?
It was,
and, okay.
It was crazy. It was
Did you
hard.
have a little bit of fun spending
Yeah,
money left over?
I took a little bit of my savings out there, and that was it. And that shit went by quick. It was just like in and out. So I immediately definitely like had to start getting out and about and start offering my services and start being part of the art community, going to shows, networking, and just starting to see what was out there. And there was so much. Like I don't think anybody in the world can go and see all of New York ever.
Nah.
It's just insane. And every day I would just go out and kind of get lost and discover new shit. And just be like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here. And just...
Did you always feel safe?
Oh, no, not at all. No. No, especially at the beginning. Especially at the beginning. I would just like go on the same subway. I would go to the same one, come back. Go on this one and come back. Like I was just very like weary about it.
Anybody ever fuck with you?
No, not necessarily. Cool. There was this one time. Yeah, this one time this bum like tried to jump me and everything. We got into it. Luckily we got away. We were both fine, whatever. But outside of that, like it was cool. For those 3.5 years for just one incident, like I feel like I did pretty good. Okay. You know?
So 3.5 and then straight to Denver?
Yeah, so like then in 2017 I then moved to Denver because I had a lot of homies out there as well. And I really liked, exactly, that too. So I always loved when I would go visit. A lot of my friends had like their weddings out there and stuff. So I would go and visit and everything. And I really enjoyed the art scene. It kind of reminded me a little bit more of KC because they would do First Fridays and they had like art districts and stuff like that. So that kind of felt a little more familiar to me. And at the time, like with all the cannabis money that they were doing, like shit was blowing up. It was insane. And there was so much money to be thrown around and like great events popping up. A lot of like city grants were being thrown around for art and everything. So I saw like a huge opportunity out there to really move in there and start to like be part of the new art scene that's like starting to boom. And I feel like I got in there at like a really, really good time. And I just kind of moved there, let's say in March, and by April I did my first show. Like it was like that.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Did you have a place lined up ahead of time for that move?
Yeah, I was still with the same girl at the time. So then we kind of just moved back over there because she was originally from Colorado. Okay. So then she had family over there and we were able to just move over pretty seamlessly. And then from there, I just kind of just did my thing in Denver for those 3.5 years, man. And I loved it. It was super cool.
And then back to KC.
Yep, back to KC in the end of 2020. Okay. I believe that was, at the end of 2020 in December. So I just hit my 3-year mark being back. Okay. In KC.
And you got a little baby, right?
Yeah.
How old?
Yeah, she's 1.
1?
Yeah.
First time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, my first little girl, and it's amazing. Yeah. I love it, man. Yeah. It's cool.
My little girl just turned 13.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I mean, it doesn't feel like that long ago that we were changing her diaper and,
that's crazy.
Doing the, middle of the night feedings and so on, watching her take her first step.
Right.
Now all of a sudden she's got a phone and likes to go to Starbucks. And I'm like, insane. What happened?
Yeah. Mine is like walking and barely like talking. And I'm just like,
and what's her name?
Her name is Sumaya.
Sumaya. Mm-hmm. Okay. Where's that come from?
So it's kind of based, like origin is kind of like Middle Eastern.
Okay.
But it means like a garden full of roses.
Oh, cool.
So in my my wife, it's a new wife. Her and my family, both of our grandmas had flower like gardens like that we remember always seeing growing up. My grandma sold roses at the market in Mexico to make a living.
Sure.
And then her grandma always had a beautiful garden that she remembers growing up. So we always loved just that. It just kind of brought back memories of that. Yeah. So when we heard the name and saw the meaning, we thought that was very beautiful and kind of like paid homage to them.
Sure.
But also, it's the name of a very famous Mexican museum in Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's called the Sumaya Museum. But now they reference it sometimes the Slim Museum. But it's Carlos Slim in Mexico City. He's like a huge philanthropist, like one of the richest mans out there. But he literally created this museum to put some of their personal collection because his wife had so much artwork and her name was Sumaya.
Oh, wow.
So he built her a museum to just store kind of their stuff. And now it's one of the biggest, most popular museums in Mexico City.
Oh, cool.
And we both are creatives, artists, and we love art. So then that's one of our favorite museums out there. We're both Mexican. We both go out there all the time.
Where's she
from? It just all kind of made sense. Her family's from Guadalajara.
Okay.
And then my family's from Mexico City.
Right.
My mom originally was born in Guadalajara, but as a baby moved over to Mexico City, and then that's where she grew up.
Okay. Man, that's cool stuff. So I gotta believe, with that much forethought into the name, that you guys found out that it was going to be a girl.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and it was crazy because at first, like, we were both pretty sure that it was gonna be a boy. She even convinced me. She was like, "It's a boy for sure." Like, I'm very intuitive. I have this and that. I 100% know. They did all these tests and everything, like, you know, the old wives' tales. Oh yeah. So she convinced me that it was a boy.
The
and
way
I was
I'm
super
carrying
hyped.
it, I
Yes,
just know.
exactly. And then, like, you read one thing and it's saying, like, yes, it's a girl over here. And then you read this thing and it's like, no, it's definitely a boy. So it's just like a 50-50 coin flip at this point. So, but she convinced me that it was a boy. And then they randomly told her because she went and got checked. And she just surprised me. And it just kind of like switched my whole mentality, you know? But man, she's like a daddy's girl. And it's absolutely amazing. Like, she is beyond anything and everything that I could possibly compare. And, man, I love her so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So will you have more, do you think?
We want to have at least one more. We're really trying for a boy. So we can just have a boy or girl, just call it even. And if we have another girl, then that's it. We're just having 2 girls and that's it. Because I can't imagine having 3 girls. And she says it all the time. She's like, that would be way too much.
Yeah. I used to have this, let's see, where were they from? I can't remember where they were from, but a whole crew of guys cooking for me at this place in Westport. And it was like, I mean, a huge percentage of the staff all from the same town in Mexico.
Wow.
And it's like they didn't all come at the same time, but
yeah.
it's like, you know, hey, if you need a couple more, I can
Yeah.
get a couple more up here.
Really?
Kind of, yeah.
That's cool.
And so one day, and you know, so there's some cousins and some brothers, and one day a couple of them were talking about how they just keep having girls, or keep having boys. I think they had a bunch of boys.
Yeah.
And one of the nephews said, pero tío, si quieres tener una niña, tienes que hacer posiciones.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck?
That's hilarious, man.
How does a kid know?
Yes, they really think like that. That's a funny story because when we went to Mexico, we went to visit her family in Guadalajara. So we went out there, and then in Guadalajara, the little town outside of there called Tequila is where they make actual tequila.
Okay.
That's the only place in the world that they can make tequila, and it can be called tequila. If it's not from there, it can't be called. Yeah.
Really?
It's like legally, like, yes, it's 100% true. Yeah. So anywhere else that they make stuff out of agave and it's sort of tequila, they have to call it agave spirits.
Oh.
It can't legally be called tequila unless it's produced and shipped and made right there. So that little town is historic. It's because it's the birthplace of tequila. So we went to visit there and we did a tour and everything. And then the guy doing the tour, it was kind of sort of getting dark and we could see the moon at the distance. And it was like the very end, like crescent moon, like the very tiny sliver. And he's like, you guys know if you guys have sex tonight with this moon, you're going to have a girl. And he just threw that out there and it was like, whatever. So then we just go about our day, and then out of nowhere, we think back to that time, and we're like, damn, what if he was right? And that's why we have a girl. It's like, holy shit, like, we didn't even think of that. But, like, we hear all these sort of different stories, like, growing up, you know, of, like, do this or do that. And I don't know. It's just a coin flip, honestly.
So, Mexico City, constantly going back, visiting. I mean, the overall feeling of safety in Mexico is very tough to put a finger on, pulse-wise for me, because I meet plenty of folks that are like, I've never, and then plenty of folks that are like, and I feel like they typically say rural parts where there's not a whole heck of a lot of, that there's like craziness and folks disappear and blah, blah, blah. But then you also hear, you know, run-of-the-mill corruption and if you get pulled over, the cops might. I mean, have you ever had an experience where you're like, I really hate that is the way things are, or has it just always been amazing? Or
I mean, it really just depends, you know, like obviously going out there my entire life, like when you're little, you're kind of just like oblivious or you're just having a great time, you know, but obviously my parents were always like, go with your cousins, like hold their hand, like go here, stay away from these areas. So they kind of instilled that early on, you know, as we were growing up. But I remember just, I don't know, it is somewhat very corrupt in a way, like cops are just kind of always out to get you just to like get a little quick buck out of you. And that's kind of annoying because when you sometimes really do need them, like they don't show up. And
Right,
it's kind of like,
right.
all right, like it's very annoying. Like we got pulled over one night. I remember just one instance in Mexico City. I was with my cousins in a car just driving to go get food or something, and they just saw like 4 guys in the car just driving, and they just pulled us over just to kind of see what was going on. And they literally were like making a big fuss that like they were feeling like checking us, and they thought that my chapstick was something. And I was like, it's literally chapstick, dude. And I was like, it's chapstick. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. But they could tell that we were American. Like, I'm pretty light skinned for being Mexican. So my cousins were all darker in Mexico, and then me and my other cousin were light skinned. So they were like, these guys are, and they checked our ID, so they're like, oh, they're definitely American. So they were really trying to like mess with us a little bit more, as if we didn't know. But my cousins are like, we already know the deal. Like, stop messing with us, and if you want to arrest us, you can, but then you can't really do anything about that.
Right.
Like, we don't have anything on us, so you're just gonna have to let us go regardless, or you're just messing with us trying to get a quick dollar out of us. So then it was just kind of like back and forth, and it was just very annoying, like a very unfortunate situation. But outside of that, we've never really gotten in trouble or gotten really in depth with the really, really bad side of like the stuff that happens out there, you know. So, you know, it just kind of, you kind of just pick and choose your battles when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Part of your conversation with, was it John Little? Is that the ice? Okay, with John Little of the I-70 podcast, talked about supporting family. And what I took that to mean is, I mean, every, you know, that same group, anytime I've ever been in a kitchen or a restaurant where there's Mexican dudes, it feels like 99.9% of them are literally sending like half of their paycheck every week back.
Yeah.
And, you know, conceptually, I love that, because you think, this person cares enough about the people that brought him into the world, and you know, you want to help them have a nice, comfortable living in their old age. But then you also, you know, hear stories, maybe not so much anymore, but I used to hear stories of like, you know, you work in Mexico, work all week long, and like really don't even earn enough to buy beef for your family. Yeah. Is that bullshit, or is there some truth to that?
I mean, yeah, there is some truth to that. Like it is very much so. Like, and also it's just like the peso is way less than the dollar. So then that's why people come here, because they can work almost essentially the same amount but be making way more.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is kind of like, well, shit, well, I might as well just go over there and just be working like that. Because in Mexico, like, the work ethic out there is just insane. Like, everybody's just hustling and working every single day, like day and night, just trying to make ends meet. And it's very difficult, like, because like you said, like, as much as you try to get ahead, like, the system just kind of like keeps them down and like just keeps them at bay. And it's so corrupt and so just like money hungry. And if you do stray from anything that's very like, whoever the political party is at the time, if you try to go against them and everything, like, I've seen situations where they like shut whole neighborhoods down, like turn off their whole water because they're with the other party that the current president is not fucking with. So I've seen like protests. I've seen them shut the highway down just to be like, we need water. Like, this is absolutely insane. And I've seen like the huge extremes, like going out there where people are so desperate for just everyday like living situation and necessities that they're just like tired of it. And it's so like crazy to see that, because here, like, obviously I've seen my share of stuff here, especially with all the protests and everything that happen when things pop off. But over there, it seems to be kind of like a weekly, monthly type of deal. And the news doesn't always cover all of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just whatever they want to kind of show. So it's crazy to kind of see the back end of all that stuff, because I love going out there. I love seeing my family. I love being part of, you know, my culture, my roots and everything. But it also hurts to see them going through life like this as well. You know, it's very difficult. So the people that do come out here and want that better life and are able to make more and somewhat send them money so that they can at least have, you know, a decent meal tonight, you know, my hat's off to them. That's just so hard to do.
What does culture mean to you? I mean, I think you talked about it on that podcast as well. And maybe I've seen a mention of it somewhere on your digital presence. But if you could just talk to me about culture.
Well, I mean, me personally, my culture is kind of, it's everything to me. It is what kind of made me. I feel like I wouldn't be myself without it. Like the Mexican culture itself was very much so instilled in me at a very young age. And I think it started just with giving like my name. Like it came from my ancestors that were Mexican that lived in Mexico, and to hear their stories and what they kind of went through and everything. And it feels like an honor for me to kind of like, carry their name now with what I do. And I just absolutely loved going out there. It always felt, and I say this a lot, it always felt like that little missing piece of my puzzle.
Cool, yeah.
And when I would go out there, and as I started to get older, like I started to realize that like this is what was making me whole, and it was what I was missing in the U.S.
What age?
I would say like maybe, I don't know, when do you start school? Like 5, 6 years? Yeah. So like even like in elementary, like I would see the differences of when I would go to Mexico and come back, and I would just feel like this is where I belong. This is what it was, and I was like that missing little thing that I wouldn't get anywhere here.
Cool.
But we would go to like the Mexican like fiestas and like festivals and stuff that they would have here in Kansas City. It was a huge part of the culture, So we would go to that, and it was reminiscent of those times that I would have in Mexico. So it would always remind me of those experiences, and
Do
I
those still
absolutely
happen
loved it.
here?
Yeah. They have the Fiesta Hispana that they have down in Barney Alice Plaza.
Okay.
Yeah, so they
Cool
have
stuff.
them around. Yeah, it's like packed with like vendors, food, music,
When?
performances. I think I might be wrong, but I think it's around the time of in September, like around that time of like
The
Mexican
actual
Heritage Month and stuff like
Mexican
that. Yeah.
Independence Day.
Yeah, so I believe it's around that time if I'm not mistaken. But we would always grow up just going to that. It was just another way for us to go get a quick taste of Mexico if we weren't there.
Sure.
And I absolutely loved that. It was just a great experience, and like I said, like it was just reminiscent of the things I would see when I would go to Mexico. So it played into my brand entirely.
Yeah.
Like there was no way that like I genuinely don't think that Dink himself as a character, as a persona, as an artist would exist without my Mexican background.
Okay.
It would be completely different, and I honestly like can't even imagine what that would look like. I feel like I wouldn't even be an artist without that sort of culture.
So if you're starting to feel this completion, this missing piece to my puzzle around 6-ish, at what age are you like feeling like you're an artist?
I mean, since I can remember, I've always been drawing, and my parents always told me that. They're like, you were always just kind of pen and paper, whatever you had, you were just sketching, drawing, coloring, whatever it was, it didn't matter. And so going into school, I always loved art class. I would always love any art project and everything. I would always just get engulfed in it and loved every type of process. Even when I was young, I would try out a bunch of different things and just kind of see what I liked. And like some things I wouldn't really mess with, like clay work, sculpture, pottery stuff. Like it wasn't really, I would do it because it was part of the class, but it wasn't something I gravitated towards. It was always just pencil, pen and paper, markers. Like I was just always kind of just doing that. And it just kind of started to like evolve as I got older. I started to just hang out with my older siblings and my cousins and stuff. And I mentioned this before, but they always had like graffiti magazines and lowrider magazines and like stuff around that was just dope,
Yeah.
And it was part of the culture as well. And I absolutely just got engulfed in it. And I was like always tracing those things and just started getting involved with that sort of style. And it always captivated my eye, especially just driving around and seeing graffiti around. It was just public art, public free art around. And I was like, that's dope. That's like, how do they do that? And as I got older, I would start to study it and just be like mimicking the strokes and doing that. And they started teaching me about the spray cans, the tips, the can pressures, the different types of markers, the black books, the sketchbook, everything about the whole graffiti culture. Like I started to learn about that because my brothers, my cousins, and friends were all into it. So it was just around me the entire time. So I just got like completely immersed in it, and I loved it, man.
Very
it was
cool.
super cool.
So maybe this won't be the case, but I imagine as a pretty new girl dad that at some point Frozen and Moana will be part of the mix.
Probably.
And hopefully that includes Coco.
Yeah, 100%.
Are you a fan of this movie?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I think it was done great. I think what they did with it was, nice.
I didn't know that those were called sugar skulls until I saw your stuff.
Oh, really?
I've always been like, it's Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, I cannot. I mean, I'm an easy crier.
Yeah.
But I probably cry like 5 times every
Really?
time I watch Coco.
Yeah.
It just, and I feel like it's authentic in
It is.
in the storytelling and the history. I mean, just so well done.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I totally understand Dia de los Muertos.
Okay.
But at least in that film, you bring something that resembles your ancestors that have passed, and then it beckons their spiritual presence, or is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, you're not way off at all. So Dia de los Muertos, I guess going back into your question about the culture, that was
Yes.
something that was early instilled in us. Like we would always create our Dia de Muertos altar at home. My mom was
So
super
that's
into
okay.
it. Yes,
Okay.
100%. Yeah, that movie did so well in their research and going to places and actually finding out the background stuff that, like, unless you're Mexican and did that, like we picked up on all those little tiny things that they actually researched, and that's why I loved it.
Okay.
It wasn't just like a surface level, like let's just kind of throw this out there and see if it
The
sticks, you know?
Mexican, hey.
Yes, exactly. So they did the research, and that's what I really loved about it because it was so relatable. So since I was little, I very much so remember my parents always creating their ofrenda, the altar,
Yeah,
like we see
yeah.
in the movie. So it is filled with pictures of our past loved ones, things that they left behind or things that they love. Like, let's say, like my grandpa, he loved play dominoes, so we have his domino set.
Cool.
My grandma loved Coca-Cola, so that. And my other grandma loved to sing, so we have a guitar. Like different things like that. So we'll basically take a table or whatever we have, and we'll create different types of like levels to it, because it's kind of like the ascension of, like, you know, the life afterlife type of deal. So
Oh.
it all has meaning to it.
Okay.
And you can place different types of items on here, like candles, to kind of showcase the light that the spirits can come and follow. We put Dia de Muerto, like bread that's only
I was
made
gonna
around
say,
that
is there
time.
food that
Yeah. So you can put out their favorite foods, and
Yeah.
we cook it, and we just have it there. And there's certain days that you're supposed to put it out, and then you just leave it there. Like they come and they like enjoy this altar and they feast. It's kind of like a little offering for them. So I remember growing up, we would always do this, and it was always a time to just reminisce and, you know, pay homage to the family member that was gone, and just remember everything that they taught us while they were here, and just pay respect to them, because without them, you know, we wouldn't be here.
Now, when, you know, I don't mean to liken it to Christmas or
Yeah.
Halloween, but, you know, a lot of American families, I think, have a box or tub
Yeah.
of Christmas decorations, and
Yeah.
they come out and they get put back away.
Yeah.
Does something similar happen? And if so, are the elders like, be careful
Yes.
with that shit, or
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
kill, you know?
Yeah, it is. And we do, but when we unwrap it and when we create the altar, even that is a process. That is like a very sentimental process for us, because we take things out and we're like, oh, grandma loved this, or remember that one time when this and that, and we just reminisce.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. You know,
Yeah.
we're supposed to. We're not just taking stuff out and decorating and taking a picture and be like, hey, it's Christmas, you know? Like,
Put it on
Yes,
Instagram.
exactly.
It's almost
Like, all of it is just so significant and meaningful, and I think that always inspired me, because it always told a story.
Yeah.
It always had meaning. And so when I started to do my artwork, I was like, I want my stuff to like be meaningful as well. I want it to look dope. I want people to see it and be like, that's tight. But then once you sit back and like hear the meaning and find out where it comes from, I think that's what intrigues and keeps people in.
Now, is there some liberty when you're creating your ofrenda, or is it the exact same every year, and this has to be just
Right, yeah.
or does it vary from household to household?
Yeah, it's household to household. So there are, if you can, and you can look this up online if you're ever interested in like finding out more, but there's different like levels to it, and there's different types of items that are like somewhat like very traditional, that you put like the pan is supposed to show like the bitter sweetness of life, you know, and you put the candles and you put the cempasúchil, like marigold flowers, and and different things like that, you know.
They're colorful, right?
Yeah. So they're supposed to just like mimic the sun in a way. They're kind of like the sunflowers. But each little item has sort of like meaning to the ofrenda, and then you personally can include your own sort of stuff, your own sort of flavor and touch to it. So I made one last year in my own studio.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, so I made one in my studio.
You're a head of household,
Yeah.
dad,
Yeah.
spouse, all this shit now.
So all these things that were taught to me, I am now teaching it. And like my wife, her family didn't fully do the whole Dia de Muertos thing. Like she never got brought up doing that. She knew about it and she knew the culture and the traditions and everything, but it wasn't something that they necessarily celebrated or did in her household. And when we met, I was like all about it. And I was like, I want to start doing this. And obviously, now that we have a little girl, we're definitely going to instill that in her because it's super important to me, to her. And now we're including her past family members in the ofrenda and being able to, expand that way and just teach our little girl about them and the traditions and the culture so that she can grow up and be proud of that. Like, that's 100% like what our parents wanted us to do. And we would go to school and sometimes my friends would come over and they'd be like, "What's going on at your house? Like, why do you?" And now I would explain
3 meals on that
Yeah,
table.
exactly. Like, was anybody eating this? I'm like, "Don't touch that, dude. Like, that's for my
not
grandpa."
You.
Yeah,
not you.
Yeah. So it was super like weird and kind of funny that like it wasn't normal to do here. Like in Mexico, everyone kind of did it, and in Mexico, it even goes to like an even bigger extreme because they go to the actual like tombstones and the graves and like the cemeteries and they decorate and like go all out there, and they have the candles, they have music, they have food, and they just hang out at the cemeteries and just like have their own little sort of ceremonies.
So like to summarize what Dia de los Muertos is
so it's a holiday and tradition based around the idea that our life is forever. Death is not the end, and it's a way for us to celebrate those past family members and friends that are no longer with us and honor them and remember the things that they love, the things that they taught us, the things they left behind, and just remember that without them, we wouldn't be here. And so we create an ofrenda that honors them in that way, and we just pay homage and respect to them during that time. And it's just a way for them to come back from, the afterlife and visit and just hang out with us for a little bit longer.
And it happens when?
So it's usually like, I would say roughly it's like around a week of a whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So every day. The main day is like November 2nd.
I thought it was right.
Yeah. So it's right at the very beginning of November. But some people start putting things out like a week. So every day within that week, they like put something else out. And one day is like specific for like babies who passed. Another day is specific for adults. Another day is specific for this and that. So there's different types. And it just depends on your household and what part of Mexico you're from. Because that's where and how you're being brought up to celebrate it.
Right.
But I would say roughly the length of it would be around a week. But the main day is definitely like the 2nd.
The 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. So where does Sugar Skull come? Where does that name come from?
So that comes from the actual Dia de Muertos sugar skulls. They're actually made of sugar.
It's like candy?
Yeah. So it is. You're not supposed to eat them.
Oh.
But if you can imagine, you know how things are made in molds and you like pour plaster into it and you make. Okay. So basically, they have molds in Mexico that they bring out for this time, and they create sugar skulls. So they make their own mixture and they put them in their own molds. And every family, every household has kind of like their own. That's been sort of somewhat passed down. Or you can go to the mercado and just buy your own.
Sure.
So it's just a very like intricate little tiny skull, and they all look the same depending on who you're buying from. They all have the same mold, and then you let them dry, take them out. And then you basically decorate them. So you have a day where you can go and your family just decorates them. And you put the name of the deceased on the forehead. And then you decorate it with like filigree and different stuff. And it's usually with like frosting, kind of like cupcake stuff.
Sure.
So you're frosting this sugar skull, this skull made of sugar, literally. Frost it. And you let that dry overnight. And then we usually like wrap them in like saran wrap to kind of keep them.
Yeah.
But each family member has their own. And that's
you
just
keep them year to year.
Yeah, I've kept mine forever. We just keep them. They never go away. They never like disintegrate.
You're not making new ones every year.
No, you can. If there's like a new family member that passed or whatever, you can make new ones. And I have my own molds at home, but that's how the idea of the sugar skull always stuck with me, and I always loved decorating them. Growing up, it was just one thing that I always was like, I can't wait for Dia de Muertos because that's my favorite thing to do. You know, so that idea and concept of like creating a mold and creating a skull and then decorating it was the basis of my Dink character and how I wanted to create a template of a character and then decorate him or put him in different scenarios and different characters and evolve and make my Dink universe in a sense of characters grow. But the basis of it was that same sort of sugar skull that I would make.
Very
I was just illustrating it instead of actually making it in a mold.
I think in the pitch piece, there was mention of Dink artwork, Streetcar Stop and Peanut Power and Light, West Bottoms murals, Mean Mule Distillery, and then Parade of Hearts. I wondered if you could touch on each of those, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So those are all pretty much really cool projects that I've been involved with since I moved back. Let's see. The streetcar one was through an organization called Art in the Loop.
Okay.
And so they basically put a call out to artists, and you can submit designs for either the streetcar stop or the streetcar itself. You know how they like wrap them?
Yeah.
So
that shit ain't cheap.
no, not at all. But they get city grants, and they're able to do really cool stuff like that. So I love that the city is like, putting forth effort to like work with artists and give them these types of opportunities, because it gives us great exposure. We get paid for the designs that we do, and people get to just see
Paid
and be
for
involved.
artwork?
Yeah, right. I know. But I absolutely love the sort of aspect of it. And so that was a really great project that I was able to, truly honored and humbled that I was chosen to be one of those artists. And I continue to work with them here and there.
Nice.
So hopefully maybe in the future we're trying to maybe get like a whole streetcar rap. And maybe I'll do like a whole like Dia de Muertos theme for that. But that's maybe like a future project that I'm just kind of like hoping.
If that
we can do it.
happens, I promise you, I'm gonna show up and photobomb something.
Perfect. Sounds great. So that was that little project. And they're a great organization.
Cool.
So any artists out there looking to do that, look up Art in the Loop, and you can see when they have their like sort of submission dates and stuff like that. I have a few murals down. I have one in the West Bottoms that I got to do for an event through Spray KC, and they're a local organization that work with a bunch of artists, a variety of artists, and they basically go to companies, organizations, events, and they're like, well, we have this list of artists. If you're trying to do different stuff, like they just kind of hit you up and they're like, yo, well, here's Dink. He does this sort of stuff. If you want a mural done for this event, he can do it. And they kind of like pair you with the person or the organization wanting certain services. So they were a great organization that I was able to work with, and they did this event down there in like right under the bridge, the 12th Street Bridge. And they have like those big, like right under the bridge, they have like this huge pillars, and on the pillars they have like huge walls under there. So they were able to curate those walls and designate it to certain artists during certain events that they throw down there. So I was able to do that last year, and it was super fun. It was a really long wall, and the only requirement was that they wanted us to kind of pay tribute to West Bottoms in some way.
Oh,
so
that's
in
pretty cool.
my actual mural, like it says West Bottoms, like the letters are kind of stacked, and then it's a symmetrical piece that starts in the middle and expands, and it's exactly the same on both sides, and it's very symmetrical.
Huh.
Yeah, so that was a really fun piece, and I like to kind of challenge myself a little bit when it comes to murals. I like play with the wall a little bit to kind of just figure out my composition, and I just kind of just freestyle it, and so it's all.
I feel like it's in my lifetime, or at least since I've been aware of the world around me, graffiti has done a 180. Like it was like, you better not there would be efforts to catch people and cover shit up. And now it's like, we'll pay you to do.
Yeah.
And I went to Atlantic City a couple summers ago. And I flew into Newark and trained down to Trenton and then to Philly and then over to Atlantic City.
Yeah.
And I think it was that first leg from Trenton to Newark. I mean, just like literally the whole train ride.
Yeah.
Just every bill. I was like, this is like years worth of but like, is it?
Yeah.
Can you get in trouble for?
Yeah, you can still get in trouble if you just go around tagging random stuff or bombing random stuff. Like, it's still like obstruction of property. Like, you're still damaging property in a sense. So, yeah, people can report it or people can try to get you. If cops see you around doing that shit, you will get in trouble if they catch you. Like, it's just a thing.
A meme the other day. Somebody had been tagging a space, and an old man was coming over and painting over it, and then they painted a picture of him painting over it.
Yeah. I've seen that. And I love seeing that stuff because that's just the artist's mind just taking like any situation and kind of flipping it into something else.
Yeah.
It could have just been an easy, like, let me paint this, and then it gets buffed, it gets whited out, and that's it. But like, we have this playful side to us that we really love to like mess with people sometimes and just kind of let our creativity kind of have some fun.
So Mean Mule Distillery.
Yeah.
Where's that?
So that's down in the Crossroads area.
Okay.
So right in the hub of the art district, and right behind Mean Mule, there's a huge alley. If you know where Parlor is down there.
Yep.
So that whole little strip behind all those buildings is a big alley, and it's called Graffiti Alley.
Oh,
So if you take,
this isn't not the same alley that has Jim's Alley Bar.
it is. Jim's is very at the
Okay,
end.
because there's like really
There's a- yeah.
impressive, like, oh shit,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I
kinda-
think right there at Jim's, that's the new bar that just opened at the very end of the alley, right there, the corner. It's kind of like a little speakeasy.
King G's.
Yes,
same
exactly.
owner.
So
yeah.
that whole alley going all the way up, that's Graffiti Alley. So it's always being hit with like random murals, tags. It's a free for all down there, basically.
Okay,
But some of the
but
businesses like commission artists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do folks ever find that the work that they have done, somebody comes along and
Oh yeah.
encroaches?
Yeah.
Or,
Oh, yeah.
or isn't there some kind of code where you should, hey, it's got to stop here because
Yeah.
that's where this dude's thing begins.
To an extent, and that's where the rules get a little bit blurred because there are rules to like graffiti, and when I was growing up, like they would teach us like don't go over someone's stuff
Right.
unless you're doing kind of something better than what is already there. If you're just like you have like somebody does like a really great piece and you just go up and you just tag it, that's a disrespect completely. So then that in and of itself is like don't do that unless you're trying to start beef with this person. Like, that's a disrespect. Like you're just going to go and bomb their shit. You're just like, whatever. I don't care for you. I don't have no respect for you. Like, let's go. And then you start kind of going back and forth. So then they may be going and like tag some of your pieces, and then it just goes back and forth. And that's what starts kind of like the graffiti beef type stuff, But down there, Graffiti Alley is a free for all. It's literally like people understand that like your piece can get covered at any point in time, and it's not necessarily like a dissing thing. Some of them do. Like I said, some of them do have beef with each other, and they'll go around and they'll just cross you out just because they don't like you. But other people will come up and like make a piece, and then let's say the next week somebody comes up and it's a great spot and they'll do another piece over it. But somewhat of the underlying rules are that like if you're gonna go over someone's stuff, like it has to be as equally dope or doper than what they did.
But that's totally subjective.
It 100% is, but there's somewhat of a quality control where like you see something super cool, you're like, all right, cool. Like I don't want to go over that. Like, or I respect this person. I know who they are, and it's kind of like a need to know basis.
A lot to people being good people.
Yes, exactly. And I've had pieces down there that have been writing since like 2016 or so, even before then, that are just kind of just there and nobody really touches them.
Nice.
Yeah, and maybe it's a respect thing. Maybe it's people know me. Maybe it's because I don't really go around and go over people's works like that. And you kind of can go down there and you can be like, there's little corridors that are like framed nicely, and you're like, this one gets hit up almost every week. It's just a constant thing. So anybody that puts anything up, they just know that it could just disappear tomorrow.
Sure.
So it's just an evolving thing. And that's the kind of the appeal of it. That's why it is Graffiti Alley, because it's kind of just like, it's always evolving, always changing, and people are just always about it. I have a piece down there at Mean Mule because the alley's right here, and then Mean Mule's back patio area is right here, and it goes directly into their building. They have part of their patio is like fenced, and I did this whole section right here, and that's one of my biggest murals in KC.
And so it's protected in a sense?
In a sense,
like you would
yeah.
have to go out of your way to fuck with it?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
And also, like, I don't know, like, just me personally saying it, like, it's one of my, like, better pieces here.
Oh, nice.
So, and you can tell because you can look at a piece and study it and be like, was this just, like, a quick sketch fill and, like a burner throw-up piece just kind of really quick and just to get your name up? Or did they really take their time, create the wall, do cutbacks, and, like, you see all the technique. If you really know, you'll be able to look at walls and be like, that's technique right there. Like, that's dope. They took their time, and, like, it's not just a quick little whatever. So I really took my time on this wall. It's a really good wall that I'm very proud of, and so I feel like people can kind of respect that and see that, and I think that's, genuine. It's part of the art game. It's part of, each other's crafts. We respect each other in that sense.
Sure. So Parade of Hearts.
Yeah, Parade of Hearts was cool. I think they've been doing it now. I think maybe this was their second or third time that they've kind of done it, but I was part of the first group of artists that they chose when the project first launched.
How many hearts?
Oh, man. I think
like 50 or something?
Yeah, it
or
was a big
25?
number.
I
The
mean,
first time they did it, it was like the biggest number. And then from there, they started to curate it a little bit less and less. But the first time around, I think it was like 100 hearts.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was like their big, huge like come out. And so that project was really fun. basically it's kind of reminiscent of like when everybody was painting those cows back in the day,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and they would place them in different places. So it's kind of like that, but they're basically just huge hearts. And again, you would have to submit a design and, you know, get approved, get
okay.
chosen. So there was over like 500 submissions, I believe, and then only 100 artists got like chosen.
And you were one of them.
Yes, I was one of them. So that was really cool.
And where is yours?
So during that project, the hearts you would get chosen. They would give you the heart, you would paint it, and then you would give it back before a certain timeline. And then they would then choose where they wanted to place the hearts all over, everywhere around Kansas,
Okay.
Kansas City, Missouri,
Yeah.
everywhere. And then those hearts lived in that space for, I don't know, a little bit less than a year, I believe. It was
Okay.
just X amount of time, just weather permitting. It was more so like that. So mine was placed down on Southwest Boulevard,
Okay.
like right on the main strip where all the Mexican restaurants are,
Sure.
next to Royal Liquor. It was
Yeah.
right here on the corner next to the
Oh,
little
cool.
fountain. Yeah.
Nice.
So it was down there. Then after that time period, they collect them all back out and then they auction them off. And that's how they collect the money that goes back into the community and research for, I
they
believe, heart
heavy?
disease. Yes.
So-
yeah, they're not solid, but it is like a huge heart, and it's like kind of like a vinyl plasticky material, and then the base of it is like a pole, and then it has like a base kind of like your microphone that just kind of like holds it up, and then the base they install weights inside of it, like sandbags and stuff, to like hold it down because
Sure.
it could be like
Yeah.
moving around. But yeah, so it got auctioned off, and I don't know where it is. I don't know who bought it.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, that
Yeah.
seems like you could
So-
find out.
I mean, sort of. Maybe if I hit them up, I can see.
Sure.
But they just all got auctioned off, and it was a really cool project and event.
And the moving of it from to you and then back to, do you have to be responsible for that? Or
Yeah, I had to go pick it up. So I had to go borrow one of my cousin's trucks and go there, scoop it up, put it, and then drive home with a
Primo.
huge heart in the back. Yeah. And then take it to my house, and I painted it in my garage because it was like around like December, January or so. So it was cold as hell. So I was in my garage just painting this thing, finished it, and then again, pack it up and then take it to them,
Okay.
to American Royal, which is where we had the initial like
Oh, yeah.
opening for it. It was cool.
every once in a while I'll be driving around in a residential area and
Yeah.
somebody will have one in their front yard. I'm
Really?
like, what the fuck?
Yep.
How'd you do that? You
Yeah.
know?
No, yeah. They definitely paid a good amount.
Cool. Man, that's good stuff. So, the studio.
Mm-hmm.
What did we say? 600 Ohio.
Yeah.
In KCK, Strawberry Hill. 7 months ish.
Yeah.
And I know. I mean, I read the description, but you describe it for me, please.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly been like one of my biggest dreams and goals in life, I
Cool.
would say. And I can distinctly remember, like, when I started the brand, I worked right out of art school. I got a job working at another art studio. And they did everything that I loved. Like, they did like design, illustration, clothing, merchandise, toy stuff. And it was just everything that I loved. And I was like, this is super cool. And they had a cool studio. And I was like, man, I want to just one day have my own space and just offer everything. So that was kind of the overall goal, just on the back burner, just like one day, like far-fetched, you know. But then I moved to New York, and then I moved to Denver, and I never was able to find a space like that. And also, it was crazy expensive out there. Like, it was nuts.
Yeah.
So instead, I just focused on expanding my own brand and doing my own thing, just being mobile with it and just kind of figuring that stuff out. But then as soon as I moved back to KC, and getting involved again in the art scene in that way, and networking and expanding that again, I just randomly came across, I knew the guys that were their previous tenants.
Oh.
It used to be a bookstore called Flagship.
Okay.
And so they were right there in the Strawberry Hill area. So I would always walk by because my house is literally 2 blocks from there.
Yeah.
So it was my neighborhood that I grew up in, and I was able to take over my family house where I grew up in. Now that my wife and I had our baby, I took over our family house.
Really?
Yeah. So we moved in there in 1994, and my handprint is still right there on our driveway, like when I was
cool.
little. Yeah.
Very cool.
So then I took
By
over
the
that
way,
house.
I was already gone from
Really?
East at that time.
Oh, really?
That's-
Damn. Okay, cool. Shit. So, yeah. So I was able to take over the house, and in being in that house now, raising my daughter, I was always in the neighborhood. So I just got word that the Flagship guys were going to move a little bit, just like a few blocks down, because they outgrew the space. So I just literally hit them up. I was like, yo, like, what's going on with these? What are the details? What's going on? Who's the landlord? And I got all that. And I hit that guy up like that day. I was like, yo, I'm trying to get in here. What do I got to do? And it was like about a month's process of like going back and forth with him. And because he was obviously looking for other tenants and stuff like that and just trying to figure out what the best options were. But I finally like just kind of convinced him and he gave me the opportunity. So the flagship guys moved out mid-April. And then I solidified that when they moved out. And so I got the keys at the end of April. And then May, June was my build out. And then I opened in July.
So you changed walls and...
So I went in, I like redid all the walls. I redid some electrical, finished the bathroom, finished some of the ceiling.
All yourself?
Yeah, me and my dad.
Nice.
Yeah, me and my dad. My dad is a master builder, 100%
What's your dad's
master
name?
builder. Vicente.
Vicente.
Yeah.
Shouts out to Vicente.
Yeah. He's a master builder. He's always been super creative, and growing up, just seeing him build everything. He's built almost everything in our house. He expanded the house like crazy, and everything and anything you see, I'm like, that's my dad. And he's just like
So dope.
amazing in that sense. And my mom is super organized and business driven, so I got like both of those combined, and I was like, let's go.
Here we are with the marrying of
Yes,
things
exactly.
and the
Everything
cultura.
just always kind of blended in this perfectly great way for me. So we finished that out, and then I just did the opening because I was like, do I want to like keep expanding and growing and wait to do my opening later? And I was like, no, let's just do it. Like, let's just do it and kind of just jump in and like, you know, just kind of see what is happening. So I opened right in the middle of what is called the Third Friday Art Walk season.
Okay.
So that happens in Strawberry Hill during May to October. So basically, it's kind of like First Fridays in the Crossroads, but we do Third Fridays, and we shut down part of the street on the main street of 6th Street in Strawberry Hill. We close down a section, and they have like hundreds of vendors, artists, performances, food, like all the businesses open up and they host different artists. And it's just like a big, huge like art fest. And it's super dope. It's super fun. I think this past year was the 3rd year that they've been doing it. And I've participated in and out of it when I was barely moving back. Like I would still like go out and do some live painting or pop-ups and stuff. So I was like, I'm going to open during this time. And I opened on 3rd Friday in July. And I just like put up all of my stuff around, put up all my merch, and just kind of opened the doors and just kind of had my grand opening, saw what happened. And I had like over 200 people come through that day, just show love, support. I like did the ribbon cutting and everything, had music, had food trucks, sold a bunch of merch, and it was great, man. It was honestly super great. So for me to have now a space that encompasses every and all the services that I offer, me personally as an artist, but have people being able to come to a space now and like get that whole experience, that was where the dream started. And now being here is like crazy. Dude. It feels so weird, man.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
Now, none of my business, and feel free to tell me but I'm not a person that can see a business plan or finances and things of this nature, unless I have like pen and paper in front of me. And but you're able to turn a profit. Like you have your overhead winds up being less than, I mean, right? You're bringing in revenue by selling merch and offering functions. Or can people rent the space too? Or
So that's why I say it's a multi-use creative space, because I use it as my own personal studio. So all my own client work and stuff, like personal client commissions. I do like clothing orders for people. People just come in and they're like, yo, I need some logos done. I do side stuff that aren't necessarily my brand or style, but I know how to do illustration and design in order to help other brands start to grow. Like new mom and pop restaurant that just opened, I'll go to them and just be like, yo, do you guys have a logo? Do you have business cards? Do you have this, that? Like I can offer them, and I'll give them a little package deal, and I give it to them fairly cheap, or I do trade work if they're willing to like do pop-ups at my spot for free or this and that. Like I'm always working with the community and trying to build them as much as I can. So I offer my skills, they offer theirs, and we do a little bit of trade work.
Awesome.
So I'm always just looking for like new opportunities in that sense. So yes, it is a gallery space during the Third Friday Art Walks. Like I opened the door so to have my stuff in there, but also I want to start hosting other artists to be creating shows.
Cool.
You know, so that's definitely the plan for this year. I have the storefront right when you walk in. So all of the merch that I create in store, which is my clothing line, and then all the like prints, skulls, stickers, buttons, pins, anything and everything that I create is right there for easy accessibility for anybody to walk in. I also do workshops and artist talks and presentations.
Oh, wow.
So that goes into like kind of the vinyl workshop that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
I do a big one for October for Dia de Muertos. The entire month of October, I do one that you can come in and paint your own sugar skull. And I give you a presentation on what Dia de Muertos is. You see my ofrenda. I give you pan de muerto, work with other local like groceries and like promotion and just help businesses get in. And you leave with your own sugar skull.
Cool.
Yeah.
And landlords.
Yeah.
Cool.
100%. Like he's all for anything and everything that I'm doing in there.
Nice.
As long as I'm not like going crazy and throwing wild parties and everything, you know.
But you don't have a worry that like in a year from now or whatever, you might have to look for a new.
I mean, I'm always looking for new spaces just because I feel like I'm going to start growing and evolving. So I'm always looking for the bigger, better deal. If I find a space that's way cheaper than what I'm paying in a better location, 100% I'm going to try to go check it out.
Okay.
You know, I'm not locked into this space by any means, but it is a great jumping off point for me. And the opportunity just kind of presented itself. And I was like, let's try this out, because if I don't, I'm always going to wonder what if, you know, and it was a perfect like month-to-month situation too.
Cool.
So I'm like, what, there's nothing to lose. Honestly.
Win-win.
Like, yeah.
So when you walk into the space, you personally,
Yeah.
do you feel yourself like joy filled?
Yeah.
Like this is the shit. I'm so stoked I did
lot,
this.
Man.
Nice.
It feels really nice because throughout my entire career, like I've kind of always worked from home or had like home studios, or I would go and like be in like community studio spaces. Like I would have my own space, but it would be with a bunch of different artists.
Sure.
So I wanted to experience all of that and just kind of get a little bit out of it as much as I could. And I love those scenarios. Like they've worked for me this entire time, but I always just wanted to open the doors and just be like, this is my space. Just kind of like how you have your space here.
Yeah.
Like, this is your space. This is your sanctuary. You can do whatever you want in here. And I'm so grateful that like my landlord trusted me, because I like have murals around. I like redid some of the walls with like some brick texture. I like went all out, and every single corner and piece of that space is me. And it just shouts the Dink brand, you know? So I was very lucky. And every time I go in there, like it just like kind of comes over me that like, this is my space, and like I'm in my own sanctuary and I can do whatever I want. And it just fills me with so much creativity to just go, you know, and it just changes my mentality from like being at home and being a dad and everything, like just getting to my space and opening my doors and just having people come in and be interested and just kind of like curious is great. But I'm just in there working the whole time, man.
That's super, super cool. I mean, it's also super cool that you live in the house that you grew up in, and adds a whole other layer to the ofrenda.
Yes,
I mean, like
exactly.
literal generations and figurative generations. I mean,
it's insane. And we do our ofrenda in the big, my dad created this extension to our house, and it's a giant dining room. So that's where we host all of our family parties and functions. And it can host like 20 people.
Really?
Yeah.
Seated?
Yeah, seated. We have a huge, huge table that's just like 20 people, like 10 on each
That your
side.
dad built?
No, we bought that one in Mexico. But the whole room itself, we built it when I was like 10, 11 or so. And I remember being part of the build out. Like I was out there, we were throwing the cement, putting the bricks, putting the wood, everything. We always grew up being part of all of my dad's build outs. So we always saw everything that he could do, and how it was just like, let's build this with our own hands. Like, we don't have to hire anybody. My dad was very proud of that aspect, that he was able to provide and like create all this stuff, and also teach his kids, you know, how to do these things. Yeah. And so I love working with my dad, and he was super psyched when I got the space, and he's like, all right, I'm coming back, because he goes back and forth from Mexico. So he's usually out there the entire winter because he doesn't like the cold. So he's just chilling out there in his rancho.
Fly?
Yeah.
He'll fly.
He'll fly sometimes, or sometimes he'll take the bus, so he can just like, you know, fly a little bit cheaper. But he was super hyped with it. So him coming back and being able to be part of the process and all that, and helping me with the build out. I have like a little like picture of my dad in the studio that says like, shout out to him because he helped me and all this stuff. And it's like the most bizarre picture, because it's him, like they just photoshopped his face on Rambo in Las Vegas. And I just have that, and people are like, why is your dad super ripped? I'm like, yeah, we used to work out, you know.
Yeah,
but just little
Don't
things
fuck
like
with me,
that, man. Yeah,
my dad will come out.
Exactly. You got to watch out.
Oh my goodness. So youngest of 4.
Yes.
And how did mom and dad meet? Do you know?
They met in Mexico. So it was during the time when my mom was in Mexico City, and my dad actually grew up in a little town outside of Mexico City that's like about 45 minutes out, and it's called San Vicente Chicoloapan.
Okay.
And that's a tiny little town, like just one center square. It looks like the town in Coco. It's
Okay.
super tiny, very rustic, very
Picturing
like
that dog.
Yes, exactly.
Following you around.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's very much like that. And so we grew up going to Mexico City and going to his rancho all the time, every summer. So my dad would come down to Mexico City for work, and then my mom went to school with some of my dad's sisters.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a random sort of weird connection. And my parents tell the story all the time that my dad was like, they actually brought your mom to me so that we can get married. And my mom's like, the hell they did. You're crazy. But the story is basically like, my dad really liked my mom and basically asked my grandma, my mom's mom, like, hey, do you guys want to come to a party that we're having in the rancho? Come out there and we're just going to have a party. We just want to invite our friends or whatever, and this and that. And he's like, she knows my sisters, so like, you know, it's not that weird.
Right.
And my mom was like, hell no. I'm like, I ain't going to this fucking rancho-ass party, and I'm just going to chill here. And so then I believe at the time, my dad's dad, my grandfather, he was what is called in Mexico del presidente, the president. So he was, but in that time of the actual town, it's like being a mayor.
Okay.
So he was the mayor of that town, so he had a lot of pull. So then like, it told them, like, yo, you should definitely come. We'll send a car or whatever. And so then they came and they picked them up, and then they brought them. So it was like my grandma, my mom, some of my aunts and uncles. They all went to the rancho to the party. And that's when my dad's like, yeah, they brought you so that they can, you know, we can get married. And my mom's like, yeah, right. So that's how they met. And they were obviously super young. And just back then, you know, you would just get married and then just kind of figure out life. So
Yeah.
they just got married super young, and they had my sister, and then they had my brother, and my mom had to go move to the rancho and live her rancho life. She didn't like it. And then my dad got an opportunity to come down to Kansas City and just start working. So he found great work, and he was like, let's just do this. Let's just figure this out and make more money, come down here and search for a better life. Went back out there, was like, do you want to move? And my mom's like, yeah, get me out of this rancho. Like, let's go. So then they just came down here, and my parents have been here for 42, 43 years now.
Okay. So oldest two born in Mexico, youngest two born in KC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, memories of mom and dad putting on music in the home for you guys to listen to?
Yeah.
What were they into?
All the time, man. My parents, they love to dance.
Okay.
So they always had music going on. The house was never quiet. Like,
Sure.
I remember that all the time. And that's kind of how I am now, too. I don't like the quiet. I don't like I wake up and I'll, like, immediately, like, just turn something on. And now my daughter is like that, too. Like, she'll wake up and she'll go to the TV and be like, ugh. So I know she wants music.
Right.
And she doesn't even watch TV like that. Like, she doesn't sit there and just watch. So she just wants noise, sound, something. So we would listen to, obviously, mariachi music, Vicente Fernandez. Would listen to old school, like, boleros, like, trios, like, just, like, guitar, just, like, very influential, like, folklore, like, music.
Yeah.
But also they would just put on their, like, dancing music. So salsa, merengue, some cumbias, some norteñas, a little bit of everything. Like, the household wasn't necessarily just one thing.
What was the medium? Because this is before streaming.
Yeah.
What are they?
No,
CDs?
I mean, they would have, so they would have their CDs. My dad did have records, like old vinyls and stuff that he would sometimes play. But yeah, it was mainly that, and CDs was usually the things. My dad had some old school tapes too that he would just play here and there. But yeah, man, I just remember my dad had a sound system too, and he would randomly play at like or rent them out for quinceañeras.
Oh.
Yeah, so then like he would sometimes play, or some of my cousins would like DJ and like go and rent the system from him. And then I got into it a little bit too. I would go and play some quinceañeras too, and I was like DJing. But I remember the old school, like, just CD books, just huge CD books, and you're just going through all of them.
500 Case Logic.
Yep. So my dad would always, when we would go to Mexico, we would go to the mercados, and he would always just give me the new CDs, give me this, give me that, and all our music would come from Mexico. So we would have the newest shit from Mexico that we would play at the quinceañeras, and people were like, "Damn, we haven't heard that." And so we were on top of it in that sense. We were really into it.
Now, I've likened the idea of the music that your parents play when you're young to furniture, right? It's there. You maybe you have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
You remember it. And eventually, at some point, you take a step in your own direction and start down your own path.
Yeah.
Is there an album, not necessarily from your list, which thank you for that, by the way, that you first fell in love with, or maybe bought or borrowed, or that sticks out?
I I mean, I would say it would probably be just the stuff that my brothers had around.
Okay.
You know, it was just kind of like they influenced me a lot as far as the music and stuff. But I remember seeing, and I probably shouldn't have grabbed this CD, but my brother had the Marshall Mathers EP.
Okay.
So I remember listening to Eminem a lot when I was younger, like a lot. And I probably shouldn't have been doing that at my age. But it just always stood out to me, and that was something that I just always grew up with, was kind of like hip hop because of my brothers and stuff.
Sure.
And my other brother listened to a lot of R&B, but then my other brother Robert would always like listen to like Mexican music and cumbias and this and that.
Sure.
And he was very involved in that whole scene. So I kind of got a mixture of different
Yeah.
things, and it was kind of like a mixture of different things, just like my parents. So I never really stuck to one sort of genre. I just kind of just evolved with like whatever I liked, and it just was always, as long as I had something playing,
Yeah.
like it was super cool. So
Now, are your parents fluent in English now?
it's still broken.
Okay.
but
That
yeah,
Spanish was spoken
100%.
growing up.
That's all we would speak at
So
home.
they might not have known what Eminem was talking
no,
about.
not at all. So they're like, all right, cool, as long as you're fine. Like,
Right. Yeah. And siblings live where right now?
So they're all still here in
Okay,
KC.
okay.
My sister actually lives out like close to like Sedalia in this place called Knobnoster.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she's out there doing her thing, and it's because my niece is in a college out there, so they're kind of just still doing their thing. And then my other brother Robert, he lives out in Lee Summit, and then my other brother still lives around here, like around the airport.
Okay, cool.
And then I'm still in Strawberry Hill.
Yeah. How about live music performances? Would you guys go to those as family, or did you go see concerts with friends when you were in middle
Yeah.
school? Like, what's up?
I remember my earliest exposure to that was probably in Mexico. Like we would go and see like live performances because they would have like seasonal like fiestas and like parties. Like so we would go to like each little town kind of has like their Independence Day fiesta, kind of like the birth of the town, like when it was founded.
Okay.
And so they have every year they have like their certain parties. And so I remember growing up, we would go to certain parties and they would always have live music. And just growing up in Mexico, like my uncles or like my godmother's dad, like they were part of like trios and mariachis. So that was always around for any party, any meal, they would just start playing. And so I was introduced to live music very, very early on, and I loved it, man. I was just hooked.
Never had a hankering to pick up an instrument yourself, though.
I mean, I like always loved the guitar, and I would like dabble here and there with it. But then it would kind of mess my fingers up, and then it would interrupt me drawing.
Oh, there you go.
So then I just chose to draw instead
Not
of
for
that.
me. It's not for me.
But then I got really into drumming for a bit,
Oh.
and it was when I was in like middle school, and my dad got me a drum kit, so I got really into drumming for a bit, and then my mom got real tired of that real quick.
Mándale al rancho.
Yeah,
ese.
exactly. But I loved it, man. So I got into that a little bit. My brother had a friend who played really good drums, so he kind of taught me the basics, and I would just kind of mess around occasionally and here and there. But I never got fully invested in any one instrument. I would just kind of dabble around.
That's cool.
But yeah, it was
on.
fun.
So let's see here. You did send me a list. Very cool. Huge time
Range.
swath
Yeah.
and range. But if we go chronologically,
Yeah.
we start with self-titled Richie
Oh,
Valens.
Yes, sir.
1959, first of only 2 records
Yeah.
for him, sadly, R.I.P. and peace to
Oh,
him.
yes.
12 tracks, 25 minutes. What's the introduction story for you and Richie Valens?
I would say I would always hear La Bamba when I would go to Mexico. I would hear the original Bamba. And it was just very traditional, very folklore, very like, I believe it came from Veracruz, if I'm not mistaken. But that was just always like a really good, like upbeat song.
Yep.
And you would hear it and it's kind of like, I don't know. I hate to
Well,
compare
hell,
it to
those
this.
opening notes.
Yes, yeah, that guitar just hits, and you're just like, boom, immediately just
All
like
right,
caught.
let's go. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So I just remember always hearing that song growing up, but then hearing this version, I always loved like old school like doo-wop and the rock era, and the 50s rock era like was super cool and fun to me because my parents would dance to it, and so I would always hear it.
Well, that's what they're saying. Baile
Yeah,
la,
yeah. Para bailar la bamba.
Para
Yes,
bailar la-
yeah,
thank
to
you.
dance the bamba. So hearing this version, I was like, that's new. Like, no, and it is because he was the first one
It's
to do
different.
that. Yes, exactly. And he was the first one to blend that. And I always just loved his version of it. So I would always hear it. But I never fully got invested in Richie until his movie came out.
Oh, yeah.
So the movie La Bamba came
Yeah.
out, and that was just a story of his life and his mom, his brother, and the girl Donna that he made the song on. And it's just his entire life story. And that is when I fully got invested in him, because his entire life story was revolved around death. And a lot of people don't really get that. A lot of people just know that he died.
28?
He was 17.
17?
He was 17.
Damn.
He was only famous into his career 8 months before he died.
God,
And
and
this
was
is
he,
what he
was
released.
he flying for work for a show?
Yeah, so
or-
he literally flew. It was right after a show, and it was Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and him.
That's right.
And so basically, after the show ended, their bus didn't have any heat, and so they were all kind of getting sick. So Buddy Holly chartered a private plane to leave to take him to the next gig, and the plane took off, and not even an hour in, it crashed because it was a huge winter storm.
Oh.
And so they just all died from immediate plane crash.
Yeah.
And they say that that's the day the music died. That's what they coined it. So that whole thing, like, hearing that story, I was like, that's insane. Like, what are the odds of that shit happening? And the only reason he got on the plane was because he won a coin toss.
What?
Yeah, he flipped a coin against one of Buddy Holly's, like, guitarists or bassists, and he won. And he's like, this is the first coin flip I've ever won. And he got on the plane, and then,
And the last.
boom. Yes,
Damn.
but he was just 8 months into his career. So within those 8 months, he was able to release these 2 albums. And the songs that he released on them were obviously very traditional rock, like doo-woppy, like that sort of flavor. But when he released La Bamba, that was something that his record company was like, we don't want to do that. Like, we don't want to offend nobody. It's like a folk song, this and that. And he was like, let me tackle it. And he's like, you don't even know Spanish. He didn't speak Spanish, like, perfectly. He was very broken because he was Chicano. He was born in Pocoima, but he comes from Mexican descent. But he always was influenced because he would just cross over the border and go to Tijuana, and he would always hear Mexican music. So he loved hearing it. So he decided that he wanted to basically do his version of La Bamba in rock and roll and just hit that opening note just with his electric guitar and smash it. And he learned Spanish just to sing this song. Because he, even in the movie, he says, if Nat King Cole can sing in Spanish, so can I.
Right.
And so he just kills it, and it creates this ripple effect, even after he died, of influences of taking old school Mexican songs and reviving them with new sounds, whether it's hip hop, rock, like classical music, like anything. And so that inspired like Los Lobos, Selena, Café Tacuba. All these people
Are you
just
into
came
Los
after.
Lobos?
Yeah, I love
Dude,
Los Lobos.
They're
amazing.
legit.
Yeah,
and
they're
they have
the ones
a
who
ton
covered.
of music.
Yes,
A lot.
a lot. And they're the ones who covered and did the covers songs for the movie La Bamba.
Right.
Los Lobos.
Okay.
And they have a little small cameo when his brother takes Richie to Mexico for the first time and gets him completely plastered. But before that happens, they take him into this like bar, and he hears La Bamba, and Los Lobos are there playing La Bamba, like the
Okay.
traditional bamba, and then that's where he gets inspired to go back and be like, I want to try this song out.
I mean, this might be that song. That might be like my introduction to hearing Spanish.
Really?
To hearing Spanish. Yeah, I mean,
That's
like
interesting.
very young. I mean, oldies. You
Yeah.
know, it's. And then classic. I was a classic rock person for a
Yeah.
little while. Somewhere, you know, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like I didn't know. There's a whole lot I didn't know that you could
Yeah.
do musically. It's
Yeah.
not just verse, chorus.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
to 4/4 time. I mean,
exactly.
There's a whole world out there, and that's. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that somebody was like, we don't want to do that, but
Yeah.
I'm glad he said we
He
got to go
did.
for it.
Without him, like all of these other bands wouldn't have taken that sort of formula and jumped with it, you know. And it's crazy to just think back to these little tiny moments that like happen in history and be like, without that, like this wouldn't have happened. And that's how I see my career. Like without my name being given to me like that, I wouldn't have expanded into this and that. So this movie just had a lot of meaning with it. And the more I dive deeper into this movie, the more I relate to it as far as like the death aspect of life. Because in the very opening scene, they show a plane crash and it falls on these kids that are playing in a playground.
Holy shit!
And he then wakes up, and it's like his dream, like he was dreaming it, like a nightmare. And then as the movie progresses, he always kind of says, like, I don't want to fly, I have my reasons. And then as the movie progresses, you realize that he says that he never wants to fly because he always has these nightmares of dying on a plane crash.
Yeah.
And that opening scene was his best friend playing on the playground at the school he was in, and these planes crashed and the pieces fell and they killed those kids that were on the playground. And the only reason he wasn't there was because he was at his grandpa's funeral. So he always felt that death was always around and pursuing him, but keeping him alive just long enough to create this, which is insane. And yet he still ended up dying in a plane crash.
That's bananas.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's that. I mean, yeah, you cheat death once, but it's coming for you at some point.
There's a saying in Spanish. It's "Cuando te toca, aunque te quites," meaning when it's your time, even if you try to move out of the way. Yeah.
Right.
And
Wow.
it was just enough time for him to, for me, fulfill his purpose in life, and then just kind of like it was his time. Like he just evaded it for long enough to just get this out.
Man. I'm going to jump in the restroom real quick. So Richie Valens, 1959, and then a big giant leap conceptually and across time, 1994, Ready to Die.
Oh, yeah.
Notorious B.I.G.
Yes, sir.
First of two for him
Yeah.
as well. 17 tracks, 69 minutes. When we were messaging, and it was, hey, can you hit me with a list? You were like, boom, here's all these genres that I'm into, and rap and hip hop were part of.
Yeah.
You mentioned Eminem, but what was your introduction to rap and hip hop, and why does this one wind up being special for you?
I think mainly because, like I said, it was my siblings. They were the ones who kind of like had the music around, and I would just grab whatever they had. But they always had Biggie, and there's always a debate of Biggie and Tupac, but my brothers were really heavily into Biggie.
Okay.
Like, and it was just kind of like what I would always hear and everything, and it was just different. It like kind of hit different and resonated a little bit different. Just the beats like stood out a lot more to me, and just his flow. His flow was so like melodic and like just hit differently that it just kind of caught me. Like it felt like a different type of swag to like kind of say, like a different type of stepping to it.
Sure.
You know, like, and even early on when I would listen to this, like I love going just like through an album, you know, and just kind of hearing.
Yes.
He was just such a big storyteller. You know, I could definitely hear everything that he was saying, even though it didn't necessarily relate to my life and like almost at all, because this being in New York, you know, around that time and all the gangster drug shit that he talked about. But I could just visualize everything that he would say, and it just flowed, like it was just flowing so perfectly well that like it just captivated me. And it was easy lyrics for me to remember as a kid, and I was just rapping along, you know, just every song on here just had something a little bit different to it. And obviously the big popular hits that he came out with on this, but even the stuff behind that like people don't fully talk about on here, I thought was amazing. Even the track with with Method Man, how they just go back and forth. And there was an interview I saw that they were just like, nah, Biggie got him. He's like, nah, Meth got him. And they're both like, we were both just trying to fucking rap. Like when they both like just equally like kept one after another.
Got him in like the rap battle sense.
It was amazing, and it was just so cool. And even in his intro is his entire life in one intro. I don't know if you remember it, but it's basically, it just starts off with his birth, like his mom is like giving birth, you like hear it, and like Diddy is supposed to be like the dad, and you hear like the time in like the old school like funk music, because it's the time when he was born.
Yeah.
And then they play another track that's more like hip hoppy, like early hip hop, and he's like, you know, a little kid, and that's the stuff he had in his tape. And then he gets older, and you're hearing more up to date rap, and then he's like out here like robbing shit and doing guns and hustling. And then you hear him go to jail, and then you hear what's happening during that time, and then you hear him get out, and he starts off saying like, oh, I can't wait to get out of this jail. And he's like, they're like walking him out. You hear the steps, and the guard's like, oh, don't worry, you'll be back. And he's like, nah, I got big plans. And then he leaves, and the album starts. I was like, that is tight.
That is tight.
I'm like, damn, that's like, you're you're thinking and you're like offering something new that I felt like I never heard before. You know, you're offering that story and you're setting the tone and the scene for the viewer to then understand what is coming next.
So Eminem, some Notorious B.I.G. Any other favorites?
I mean, I liked Pac for sure.
Okay.
Like, I liked all the stuff that he was doing, but just like, I don't know. I was always over here, you know. I was always kind of in that. Obviously, Wu-Tang was great.
Sure.
You know, just it was cool, like to have like a crew of rappers like that. I always loved
Yeah.
that, and I have like my own crew of like creatives. We have solo crew,
Yeah.
and so I always kind of like related to sort of that, you know.
My good buddy Adam, who came on for episode 13, he had this. This is the only other time that this record has made somebody's
really?
list. And he said, I remember during our conversation about this one, he said, I don't really know how to explain it, but I've always just liked that I could tell that he was fat by the way that he sounded. And I was like,
yeah, him and Big Pun.
yeah.
You can hear their breaths. Just like there was one song that I heard on Spotify that was Big Pun's I'm Not a Player. And they cut out the sound and it was just him. And you hear him take breaths, like heavy breaths before each verse, and he just spits it. Wow. So I have no idea how this man, it must have been the biggest breath he ever took. But literally in the Twins, the Mobb Deep cover that he did with the beat and where he's rapping with Fat Joe. And he says, dead in the middle of Little Italy, little did we know the riddle, the middleman who didn't do diddly.
Damn.
That
shit, dude.
That shit, when I heard that, I was like, this guy, I bet he almost passed out in the studio.
Right.
Like that shit was, and so that's one of my lines that I just always remember. And I feel like his voice is also very like remnant of his. And it's just this like big man, like tough, like power, but just flows so like perfectly seamlessly. And it's just like, it's like a vibe. I love it.
Hell yeah. And then a shorter leap to 2001, Barrio Bravo, Celso Piña. 2001, 9 of 16.
Yeah, man, he went in.
Monterrey
Yep.
is where this cat's from. And the Rebel of the Accordion and the Chieftain of the Bell.
Oh, yeah.
Is
What
titles
a
for him.
title. Yeah.
Tell me, I've never heard of this cat before.
No?
Yeah.
Oh, man, this is going to be fun. So he is basically the godfather of what is now considered the new age cumbia. So like you saw, like he has hella albums, like a lot.
Yeah.
And even before this one came out, I believe, what'd you say, like 2001?
Yeah.
Before then, I think he started in like the 70s, late 70s, 80s maybe. And he had like maybe four albums before that. And this one is the one that launched him.
Okay.
Before then, it was kind of like weird to play like cumbias like live. And because cumbia in and of itself is originated in Colombia.
That's okay. My actual first question, because I keep seeing Colombian rhythms, and talking about cumbia. And so my question was, does cumbia always have to have Colombian rhythms, or?
Yes, to an extent, because that's where the origin is. So it's like cumbia from Colombia is where it started. And so back then it was very tropical, it was very flavorful. It like just gave you like a nice little like beat to kind of dance to and step to. But it was very like upbeat. And he started to hear that because there was this wave of sending Colombia cumbia to Mexico. And then they were also sending it to Texas. I believe it was Austin, Texas.
Okay.
So they would send albums like that to Mexico City and to like Texas. And then they would send them to Monterrey. But I don't know why that little triangle just like happened. And when Celso, growing up in Monterrey, he like got a hold of these and he loved them. He's like, I want to start doing this. Like, I want to start playing whatever. So him and his siblings got together and started the band, the little
I saw
group.
that one of the bandmates had the same last name.
So it's him and his siblings that started it, and it was Celso Piña and su Ronda Bogotá. And Bogotá is a tribute to Colombia. Obviously, Bogotá is over there. But basically, he just wanted to just play these like cumbias that he would hear and kind of like in a way like remix them or just do them live, you know. And at that time, people weren't into that music. People were like, we like cumbias, but like, let's just listen to them. I don't want to go, I'm not going to pay to go see a cumbia.
Right.
Like, it's not it. They were listening to like norteñas or baladas, mariachi stuff, like traditional Mexican stuff. So at first, that's why his first albums didn't really like hit, because everybody wasn't really fully into it. But he was like, whatever, I'm gonna keep doing it. Like, he didn't care. He's like, this is what I want to do. So he then was like, I want to start taking the rhythms that we're doing and switching them up a bit and start adding different flavors. So he got inspired by taking like old school, kind of like what Richie did with old school, like folklorico, and adding his sort of rhythm and beat to it. So he started mixing and working with rappers, working with rock, working with different types of rhythms and beats and incorporating them into the cumbia. And then him being the lead like accordionist, he would just hit it with like all of these dope ass like melodies and beats. And that just created this whole new genre of cumbia that like was now reaching these kids that were into rock, these kids that were into hip hop, and blending these old school styles. And he just created this brand new sound. And this was the album that did that first. And he started collaborating with his people. And it just launched him into like the next level.
Is this like where, you know, Cumbia Kings?
Yeah.
Who's the dude that's all...
Yeah. So that's... Cumbia Kings is A.B. Quintanilla. So that's Selena's brother, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So that came from that. But yes, the cumbia sort of like hip-hoppy sort of style and stuff, he started it.
Okay.
He is the godfather of that. Yes. And when nobody else was doing it, he was like, I'm going to keep doing it. So in this album, the very first song, the Cumbia sobre el Río song, that song blew up like crazy. And I believe it got featured in like one of those movies. It was either like Crash or Babel, I believe. One of those. Okay. Maybe it was Babel. But like, you know those movies that are like kind of everything is connected type deal?
Yeah.
So it was in that, and everybody heard that, and it just blew people's mind, because this one is a mix of cumbia with like some like hip hop and like rough like bass beat. Like it just hits different. And I believe he collaborated with El Gran Silencio on this, and they're like a hip hop group out there. And it was just ahead of its time, I guess. It was just revolutionary, and it just opened the doors for like a bunch of people to start collaborating in different types of ways. And he just made cumbia go mainstream, and he was then able to create, make Monterrey a hub for this type of cumbia music. And then DJs started to play that everywhere. Other people started to take it on in Mexico City and different places, and they just started to create their own sort of sound and just hit these like deep basses and these deep notes. And I think that some of that even came from like Texas, like the chopped and screwed era stuff. Like it probably came like, and it just meshed in Monterrey so perfectly well that it just like blew up and created this whole new subgenre of cumbia.
Nice.
And it just related to this new young generation. And from that came the new, which is now the underground movement, and it's starting to come up, but it's called Colombia with the K. And that is a subdivision of even this. Okay. And it's they would take old school records from Colombia, like vinyl records, and they would just play them like in Monterrey. They would just play like at parties and stuff. And they would play so much music and just have all these dances, like public events, so much that their machines would start to overheat, and the speed on the actual vinyl, like the actual mixer, like got messed up, and it lowered the speed of the song, so it started to go slower. So a cumbia that's like started going like and then people loved it. They lost their shit.
Okay.
And so this whole subcategory of it just created this huge movement in Monterrey, that from his sound, people then started to like chop and screw it even more and slow it down, and everyone loved it. And that's where the cumbia circle evolved, and people just dance in a circle at parties.
Really?
And yeah.
Okay.
If you ever go to like quinceañeras and stuff like that, they'll play a good cumbia, and people are just in a circle, just dancing, vibing, hitting all the steps and moving. And that is a whole new genre of it, and it started with this man.
Wow! So 15 other records by him. Do you know them all, or
not all of them? But like, there's certain songs through each of them that like I just love, and they hit. And I think it's because it hits this sort of like different type of style, but he also still includes some of the traditional cumbia hits. So then you're still kind of like hearing the roots of it, but then you're hearing the new age of it, and then you hear a song with he's like singing with like a rock guy. And like Café Tacuba is another like Mexican group, and he like sings this amazing slow down like balada sort of song, and it still has that sort of cumbia backdrop to it, and
Cool.
you're just like into it. It's
Right
tight.
back
It's
to
beautiful.
the ofrenda in
Yeah.
your house.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you fuck around and get on TikTok at all?
Yeah. Here and there. Yeah.
I haven't in a little bit.
Yeah.
But in my last little wave of being on there frequently, I came across a dude called, I thought it was DJ Spizike, but I think it's Spizik.
Spizik. Oh.
Anyway, he's I think he's from Mexico, and he's insane.
Really?
Like he plays old school Mexican records,
Yeah.
and then brings in scratches
Is
and
it
beats.
just like him filming himself?
Yes.
I've seen him. Yeah.
He's got
amazing.
some ink.
Yes.
He is fucking so
He's
talented.
amazing,
I
bro.
can't believe he hasn't like exploded.
Yeah.
And maybe I just need to get back on TikTok
Yes.
and see that he has. But
Yeah. I
That-
love that stuff.
man.
That stuff I think is kind of like a genre of its own, just taking that stuff because it's things that we grew up with. Kind of like just taking one of my parents' records and then throwing it on and then he just remixes it. And I love that. Man.
Homage.
Exactly.
And I think he might be like straight, like sober,
Really?
like
Oh,
across
cool.
the board sober.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
I feel like he ends all of his videos, with he's already doing homage,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like he ends them with like,
Yeah.
this is what these
This is-
people are. This is what's up. This
Yeah.
is how I.
Yeah. I love that stuff, man. And my kind of introduction to that sort of style of stuff came from one of my crewmates. He's a local DJ here. His name is FK Menace.
Okay.
And we've been homies for like 10 years. We met in art school, and then from there we just always connected. And he's part of Solo Crew. He does these amazing like DJ sets, live performances. He creates his own beats and stuff like that too. So he's all over the town just doing his own shows, and he's killing it.
What's his name again?
FK Menace.
FK Menace.
Yeah, so
Shouts out.
that's his Instagram. So he's a dope guy, man. But he comes from a family of luchadores.
Oh, really?
And when he plays, he wears his luchador mask that was passed down from generations.
Does he have a smaller version of himself?
No,
left
not
in-
yet. He
not
does
yet?
need to do a little one. I'm gonna let him know. That's a great idea. Actually.
Nice.
But he's very into that sort of like old school flavor too. Like he grew up in Texas, and they have that his uncles and dads and stuff. They would have the old school records and stuff. So he was highly inspired by that era, and we're just always vibing. Like I would go to his studio and he's just making beats, and then we start chopping it up about old music and stuff that we loved. And he's into cumbia too, so I always send him new records and new this and that, and he like plays them for his sets because he has different types of things. So we're always helping each other out in that sense. But we collaborated on this really dope project when I was in Denver. I hosted this Dia de Muertos show. It was called the Calaca Show, and I literally gave like about 20 artists like an acrylic skull, like the die-cut silhouette of a skull, and they all just painted whatever they wanted. And I hosted it on Dia de Muertos at a gallery out there. And I asked him to come out and play, like be part of the show. So he came out there. But prior to that, we were working on for like, I don't know, a month or two, a collaborative sort of EP mix that he was going to drop.
Oh, wow.
That took all these old school songs that were important to me and kind of to him. And I sent him that playlist, and I would tell him like, this was my grandma's favorite song, and this was that, and the meanings behind them. And then he would then create beats off of those old school songs. And then we told a story with this EP. It's like X amount of songs, but the titles, when you read it, it's just one long paragraph in a way of like a poem. So one song leads to the next song, to the next song, to the next song, and
Like
it's just
Biggie's intro.
Yes, exactly. But even just reading it, so it's intro, things done changed, give me the loot, like that. So, but we would say like, I forget the song titles, but it would literally be like, este borracho está buscando, and it would just be one like poem when you would see it as an actual album. But each song was reminiscent of our old school past and like those songs that we grew up listening to, but they all told stories of deceased like family members. And so it was very, very much so like an homage to Dia de Muertos. And it was like one of our, I don't know, it's one of our favorite albums that we did. And I even did the cover art for it. I did this skull like with a ripped mask and all this stuff. It was pretty tight, man. So we went all in on the collaboration, and that's still one of my favorite albums that he's done. And we still play it occasionally here and there throughout. But man, shout out to him. He's super dope with that music stuff. Like I get into my whole process and everything, and seeing him get into his process and his craft, like, man, I absolutely love it. It's tight.
Dude.
Yeah.
Any other Hispanic artists you want to give props to?
Man, I mean, one guy that we kind of really love is this new guy named El Dusty.
Okay.
So he does what is called cumbia trap. So he literally takes the cumbia flavors that Celso kind of started and takes some of the old school songs and stuff, and he remixes them, and he just creates these brand new waves of like cumbia too. But I saw him play and when I was in Denver, and I actually got to live paint during one of his shows. It was pretty cool. So I got to meet him, hang out, and everything. We've been cool ever since. Like we message each other here and there, and he got to do a show in KC that my boy FK was able to bring him down, and they did a show at Lemonade Park. So we were down there, and I got to live paint again that day, so I got to hang out with him and all that. But he's doing really cool, like, amazing stuff with the cumbia world, and just blending a bunch of different Latin flavor with funk, with this, with that, and just creating, I just think it's just like this new age of like old school with the new school, and just making it relevant again, but never forgetting those roots.
Hell yeah.
You know, and I love that storytelling, man, because that's what I do, and that's what a lot of my homies who are artists do, and that's the kind of story they love to tell. So I love that we're able to like reimagine what that means to us, and like showcase it in different ways that are still relatable to now the youth here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Man, this has been great. I like to finish with some goofy questions and then get you out of here.
Yeah.
So, assuming everybody has a personal and a professional bucket list, shit you want to do before your certainty, you know, before antes de te toca.
Yeah.
So, if you're given the resources to knock out number one on the personal and number one on the professional, what would they be?
I would say number one in the professional would be that I want to have like a big. I have this idea of like having a show after I pass, of everyone coming together and bringing all the pieces that I've ever made, whether you're like a collector or you bought a piece from me, or you know, whatever piece you have of mine, and taking it all to one museum and just having a DINK show. Like a life after death DINK show.
Cool.
In a way. And everybody can come and like bring their pieces. So let's say if you have one, you bring your piece, and you kind of just sit there, and you as the viewer go around, and you are able to talk to these people that own these pieces, and they'll tell you the story as to how they acquired it, why, if it was a commission, this and that, and you get to have like a live sort of show of remembering like me. That's and the work.
Yeah.
So that's a show that I want to have like after I pass, but I would love to have that show while I'm still here at some point. I think that would be interesting.
Man, so much energy in the direction of passing.
Yeah.
And part of, and correct me please if I'm wrong, but part of Dia de los Muertos and Cultura and all this stuff is that it's not the end.
No.
But so, you know, it feels like you've been at peace with the idea that, you know, your time will come for a long time.
Yeah.
And that seems rare.
Yeah.
Like, if you just look out in the world, like people are like, you know, afraid.
Right.
And I mean, I'm guessing this is family and culture, or are you unique amongst your tribe in this sense?
Kind of.
Because you're young, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm 33.
Okay.
Yeah, so I am. Like my siblings obviously believe in Dia de Muertos and all that stuff, but like I said, I've always felt like I've had a connection to death. And even growing up, I always felt like I was going to die young. I always felt like I was going to Richie Valens.
Whoa. Don't do that.
Yeah.
We just got the space open.
I know, man. But I always just kind of had like that sort of connection. I don't know why. Like it just kind of was always just in the back of my head. So that's why I say that my brand itself is a playful reminder of death, but it's here to remind you to live. And I live every day doing what I absolutely love, man. There's no rhyme or reason for anybody to not be doing that. Because it's literally like tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So then today I want to just take advantage of that and just absolutely do my best and what I love to do. And I'm very lucky and fortunate and humbled that I'm able to do this, man. It's crazy.
Here's another. You just made me think of any moment of any day, you can open up Facebook
Yeah.
or Instagram or whatever,
Yeah.
and people are posting shit.
Yeah.
But of the people that are posting, you live today, like, who's actually like walking around
Yes.
mindfully
Living.
and aware
Yeah.
and like, hey man, I got one shot to do this thing, and every morning I wake up and I'm fucking stoked to be here.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing.
It's very rare. It's very rare. It's tough. It's not always. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you're
have to.
you're preaching it. You're not,
Yeah.
you're practicing it. You're doing both.
yeah, yeah.
What about your personal?
For my personal, I would say, man, that's very hard because it's kind of contradictory to how I've lived my whole life. But I'm not scared of death, but I am scared of leaving my family behind.
Sure.
Especially now that I'm a father. I wish that my biggest personal bucket list is that I see my girl grow up. And that's like that has never been on my top, like, ever, until I became a father, and that just changed my whole mindset. Like, I always felt like I was gonna die young, this and that, and now for the first time in my life, I don't want to. It's super weird.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Just got heavy in here.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that I want to be here for her as much as I possibly can, and for my wife, and just provide and just see them grow up and enjoy that time, because that's something that I'm never, ever going to be able to get back. And so I'm there for them as much as I can on the daily,
Sure.
daily. That's like one of my
Sure.
biggest top priorities right now in my life. And I love my career and what I do, but if I had to choose, I would drop that on a flip of a dime and
Sure.
just be a full-time over here.
You have
100%.
nieces and nephews?
Yeah, I come
Okay.
from I have 4 nieces and 4 nephews. So
Okay.
I come from a big family.
So your girl was not your parents' first grandchild?
No,
Okay.
she is the last one, but she is one, and my next niece, she is 17. So there's a huge
shit.
gap.
Refresh,
there. Yes,
like
100%.
all over
Yes.
again.
Yes, so now she is like the baby of the family. Like, everybody loves her, and she's just kind of just
That's
enjoying
awesome.
her own time. So that's pretty freaking cool, man.
Yeah. You get to have lunch with anybody you're choosing, dead or alive.
Yeah.
Who and why?
Oh man, I would say you need 3 of these guys.
Is Celso?
Celso
He's
also
gone too.
passed.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
so
right.
tragically was Richie and Biggie.
Yep.
Celso lived his whole life amazingly, and died at 66 from a heart attack.
Oh wow.
And my biggest regret, well, not biggest, but one of my biggest regrets is not seeing him when he came to Denver.
Oh,
He
damn.
came in March, and then he passed that year in August. Wow. And I didn't get to see him. And it was in like 2019.
I mean, I suppose that leaves you with some sense of responsibility to be a scholar of his work and
Yeah.
turn him on to people who've never
Yeah.
heard of him before.
Yeah,
And,
I play him all the time. I always get him on to anybody and everybody. And people, when they hear that first song, they know it, but they don't fully know his story and his
Okay.
background.
Okay.
And just me personally, just like my daughter, how her name is very significant to us and all that stuff. Or if we have a son, his name is
Sumaya.
going to be Celso.
Sumaya, right?
Yeah, Sumaya. Uh-huh.
His or her hairnet.
Yes, exactly.
um,
So yeah, we'll see, man. That's why I'm really hoping for a son, because it will be Celso and Sumaya.
oh,
That just sounds like a
dude.
cool band.
It does. It does.
Right?
Yeah.
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 So we'll see, man.
You're given the ability to visit your past self at any age.
Yeah.
What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
Let's see. That's a really good one. I've never been asked that before, actually. I would probably visit 2018 me.
Okay.
When I was in Denver, and I would tell
Go
myself,
to the Celso show. What are you doing?
I know, yes, that would be definitely something I would say. But the reason I didn't go to the show was because I was just caught up in so much other bullshit at that time, and it was like a very low point in my life that I very vividly remember. So I would definitely tell myself to slow down, to chill out, to take a breath, step back, and not get involved with the shit that I did get involved with at that time.
Man, when you can just
Yeah.
bullshit off your table.
Yes, that would be great. But in retrospect, man, if I wouldn't have gone through those dark times, then I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah.
So as much as those times sucked and we went through it and it was just like fucking rock bottom, bro, like it needed to happen
Yeah.
in order for me to be grateful for where I am now and take those proper steps to be like, I'm never fucking going back there ever
Nice.
again. And if I didn't, I feel like I would then eventually later in life go through it. And if I would have gone through that now when I have my daughter, I would be a wreck. That wouldn't be possible.
Probably
you
wouldn't
know?
be as good a dad.
Exactly. So I'm very thankful for those dark times coming when they did. And I'm very fortunate that I was able to get out of them and now be the person I am today for her,
Dude.
for my wife, for myself, and my family. That's irreplaceable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Are you aware that of the show Fear Factor? Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
What is the worst imaginable Fear Factor scenario for Dink?
Oh, man. Ugh. I haven't seen that show in a minute, but it's funny you mentioned that because the other day I was talking to one of my homies about it. But I remember growing up in middle school, I had a Fear Factor party,
You
Fear
did?
Factor birthday party.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was so bizarre, but like my older brothers threw it for me, and I was like, let's do Fear Factor because it was back when it was like new and like everybody was into it. So my friends came over, and at that time I was in Catholic school and right in Strawberry Hill. So all my friends came over, and they didn't know what they were getting into. But my brother set up all this craziness, so we literally had to like, we were boxing at some point. We had to eat bugs. We had to eat a live fish. We had to go across this like pool pond that we had that was green, and if you fell in, like you just came out looking disgusting. We did like a relay marathon race. We did a bunch of shit all day, and it was the greatest time of my life. And it was the party that everybody talked about for the rest of the year.
Nice.
And I always remembered just like my friend just ate a huge like summer grasshopper that was like this big, and he like won the game because nobody else was doing that shit. I was like, fuck that, dude. He just grabbed it from the fucking garden and just like it's crunched it. And he was like, you won, you won, you won right there. My brother just gave him like $5 and like that was it. But it was just the most like thrilling time like growing up and adolescent, just like doing all this crazy shit, man. But I would say the absolute one thing that I probably wouldn't go through with, that's really difficult. I guess it just depends on the amount of money, but
What? Right.
yeah, but I don't know, man. I'm very particular with like smells and like texture in my mouth. Like that shit combined, if it's something super disgusting,
Like,
I most likely
A line of people lined up to vomit in your mouth.
Yes, 100%, 100% no. I'm so good on that. Like even just the idea of it,
Right.
Even just somebody throwing up near me, I would just not want to be near them at all. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
all right. Complete this for me, please. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live if only.
If only we stopped fearing death and started appreciating life more.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow. Dude, this has been really fun. I feel like you're not trying to be weird. I just feel like you're a special brand of human being, and I'm glad we crossed paths and you came into this. So Dink Studios, DINKC studios.com.
Yep.
Dink, DINKC on Instagram.
Yep.
Both are those are the primary
those are
spots
both.
for folks to have a
Contact.
finger on the pulse, see what's going on.
Yep.
The shop is over on Strawberry Hill, 600 Ohio Avenue, KCK.
Yep.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I
right.
appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, no doubt.